Good morning one and all, and welcome to the video. My name is Saumil Shah. I work as a software engineer, and this video is sponsored by SSL proxy. So essentially this video we are going to learn how to build a spoofing module for Selenium. That way you won't be blocked. So essentially we'll be writing top level modules and classes. We'll be writing a class called IP proxy. We'll be writing a class called user agents. Then we'll be writing a class called options. We'll be writing a class called WebDriver objects. And essentially we'll have a main class. So the facade or the main class would call all these subclasses, and we'll define our settings class. So the settings would be whether you want to use proxy. So based on the settings, the WebDriver object would select the appropriate modules and it would load that for you. So with this way, with using proxies, you can essentially get most of the website, the HTML content of the most of the websites, right? And there are a lot of things that I have read over Stack Overflow, and I'll be sharing all those settings that you could use essentially in your Selenium project in order to avoid being blocked from websites. So thank you SSL proxy for sponsoring this video. They gave me a free subscription to try their product out, and essentially I would be using their proxies and I would be developing this top level module. So let's try building this in this video. All right. So let's start writing our top level modules. As I said, this video would be more object oriented. We'll be writing all these classes and injecting all these classes. So the very first thing that I could think of is we need to have all the imports. So essentially all the imports have been defined here, JSON, OSS, and some of the common Selenium libraries that I have defined here. Now once you have done that, if any of them are missing, we just want to raise an exception right here, and we do not want the code to continue after this point. So I'll say raise exception, and we'll say some. Okay, so that's that, right? Now what you want to do is, the first thing that I can think of before even writing classes, we want to think, how am I going to organize my code? So essentially I do think, like, as I said, I have a lot of classes. So all these classes, the way I'm thinking right now is I have all these classes and I would have a main class. Either I can follow an inheritance approach or I can follow an injection model where I can create an instance and pass. Excuse me. What I'm thinking more as a inheritance model, where I would have all these classes and my main class would simply inherit from all these subclasses. So let's try to develop these modules. And so the first module that I would develop is the settings class. So the settings class is essentially responsible for telling the settings that what you need in a code. So for example, this would be object, and let's define the constructor, right? Now the first thing that this class would take is use proxy. So you as a user would have an ability to enable or disable this. By default it would be false. Use user agent, we'll say use. So this essentially would use your spoofing user agent. So by default that's false. See how I'm trying to organize my code. Organizing is one of the most important thing that you want to learn in a code, because everyone can write code, but organizing, not everyone can organize the code well, right? So you want to say self.proxy is equal to proxy, and we'll say the user agent. We are defining this in the constructor now. So now since this variable have been injected, if you don't define it would take the default. And you also want to have essentially the path for the Chrome driver. So we'll define that as a string, and we'll say self.path is equal to path. This is essentially my settings class. So this class will tell me what settings to use in my WebDriver object. Okay. So now, since, as I said, we still have to develop a lot of modules. So this is one of the modules. Now the second module that I have to develop is the user agent module. Essentially every time I make a request, it should use a fake user agent. So I need to develop a class that essentially, let me also try to make this a little bit big, and let me know if you can see this. Okay, so right here I will define a class called user agents generator. By default I would inherit this from an object class. And now what I would do, and we'll zoom in as much as I can. So this class essentially would take a constructor, And here what I'm trying to define here is essentially this wouldn't take any argument. So based on the flag, it would either set it to true or false, right? So that means now think about what I'm trying to say. So this user class is using the settings class, right? We need this variable, and based on the variable you would essentially send the response, right, for the proxy. But we will do all that soon, but let's try to just develop all these modules first. So right here I have taken list of user agents and I have just hard coded it for now. It would be great, it would be coming from a database, but for now, for the project, let's just have this from here. Now what I would need to do is essentially whenever I call this class, I want to generate a user agent. So I would say first of all create a method called get user agent. And remember, now since it's not taking any argument, I could define this as a property decorator, remember. So that means when you call the function, essentially you can call it, and I don't know why it's showing a yellow line. The getter should return, yeah, I'm gonna return, hold on, hang on. So what I wanna do is essentially from this, I wanna take up a random one. So that's why I have a module called random in Python. Now, the way I think this is gonna work is I need to define, first of all, I need to get a random index. So let's define that. So this random index is gonna be random dot randint, and this is gonna be from 0 to the length of self dot agents, right? That's what we wanna do. So now what we wanna do is we wanna return that particular user agent. So in this, we'll just specify the word return and stuff like that. So now essentially we've written two modules, settings and user agents. And of course, we haven't connected all these modules. We still have to write a lot more, as I said. So these are our two modules. Let's just try the user agent module out. So in order to do that, you can say user agent, and you can say UA, let's do a print UA, the instance dot, I think it was get user agent, and remember it's a property decorator, so that's how you defined it. Okay, so let's run this and see if it works. Essentially, to just return a random user. So now we return Mozilla Windows empty. Let's rerun again and make sure this works. Windows empty, okay, gecko, okay, so we return that one. Let's try once again. Yeah, so it seems like it is returning unique every single time. So that is essentially my user agent module, right? Now my third module would be my options module. This module is responsible for choosing the right option for Selenium. So let me see if I have my snippets here open up, because I definitely need to see that. So over here, but the thing is, in order to, yeah, I'm thinking, give me 1 second, because the reason I'm thinking here is because the option modules, you have to specify, you have to use these proxies and these modules, right? But let's define that later on. Let's define the proxy module, proxy. Okay, so this is where you will get the proxy from SSL proxy. I have taken a proxy, or any vendor. Usually I would say SSL proxies are pretty great. I have tried myself, but feel free if you need anything other than that. So I have taken a proxy from SSL, and this essentially would go over here. So the way I'm thinking is I would say define get proxy. This would be a class. Actually, I don't need a constructor, so essentially I would just say a pass. And this one right here, let's just define the proxy IP. And you will have a port. Okay, actually I do want to define that. That's fine. So we'll say self.proxy, self.proxy port, and then here what you have to do essentially, IP is equal to, we do a string formatting. So you have an IP and then the port, so you format that self.proxy proxy port, and we would like to return that. Okay, so we have written 3 modules so far: settings, user agent, and proxy. Now what we need to do is we need to write the WebDriver module and the option modules. As I said, think of this as a templates, right? We are defining essentially this mini templates. So let's try to write. Alrighty, so far so good, right? So building now the options module. So this is the for driver options, right? So class. And now we need to put a little bit thinking process here when we are designing this. So whether you want to follow, as I said, injection model or whatever you want to follow, but let's make this a little bit better. Okay, so looks good, man. So far it looks beautiful, So now I need the settings here, right? So what I would do, I can inherit this class from settings. So once I inherit, I would have access to all these three attributes, right? So remember, during inheritance, you need to invoke the base class constructor, and we would do that by providing this. So we're good, right? So now I have access to all these attributes in the base class constructor. Now this settings class, as I said, would essentially return you a bunch of settings, right? And either you can define that in the constructor or you could define that in the method. Let's define that in a method called get options. So we'll say self.options is equal to options, right? And remember, these settings that I'm writing here is essentially settings for Selenium for not getting blocked. And these I have figured out by reading a lot of blogs, right? So headless, you have to start as a full screen. You need to maximize your screen as well. There are a couple of more things we need to do. For example, we need to add argument for sandbox, single process, disable dev sh usage incognito, so that every time it's an incognito mode. We need to disable the blink features. We need to disable the automation extension and disable the info bars, right? So now remember, these are my settings. Now still we need to grab the IPs and proxies based on what the user said. So now, since it's an inheritance, remember, that's why I said organizing code is one of the biggest thing that you can learn, right? So now use proxy is a flag, it's a Boolean flag. So what I can do, if self.useProxy, and this is coming from the base class as we inherit, right, this one. So if the user said they want to use a proxy, then we would like to add an argument for the proxy, right? So this argument would be right here. So we'll add an argument here, and now we need access to the proxy class, right? So this is the proxy class, remember. So either you could inject, you could create an instance, or you could simply inherit. So let's see how we defined our model. So we have a proxy class that takes proxy IP and proxy port, and essentially based on that does that, right? So what we could do is we would define here whatever your proxy is from SSL proxy and the port, right? So essentially what we could do, we could just inherit, right, this class. So I'm gonna inherit this. What did happen? So I would inherit this also. This is a multiple inheritance we are following now. So proxy, and we pass the self argument. So we did inherit that. So essentially I would have access here, right? So I just need to call the function. So essentially remove that. That's it, man. You all set. So that would take care of that. If you enabled proxy, it would do that. We follow the same procedure with the user agents. So if the user, since we are inheriting, we have a user agent class. And essentially, remember, we need to inherit the, what was that, user agents here. So this class right here would inherit from all the three user agents as well. Now remember, multiple inheritance, invoking the base class constructor, and then we have access to all the methods and attributes. So you get user agent. Since it does not take any argument, we can simply remove this and use the word get user agent. This should take care of it, right? So based on whatever you define the settings, it would apply the appropriate proxies and user agents, right? So that's done, man. Looks beautiful. Now that's there. That's our module. Now we need to write one more module, that is the WebDriver module. Now the problem here is, what's the problem? If you inherit this again from driver options, technically it should be fine because WebDriver inherits from driver option and this inherits from settings, right? So indirectly WebDriver has access to settings according to inheritance, right, principle, because parent-child relation, remember you learned in the school. So now this one right here would inherit from this one. Passing in the self attribute here. Right, now we need to have a method here called get driver object. Essentially the job of this one would be, remember, we need to just return the driver object at this point. We don't have to make it complicated, and I'll show you what I've done here. So we have, remember, since we have inheriting, we need to get these options. Am I returning anything? No. So you need to return here. Okay, so now in order for me to get the options, and since I'm inheriting, I can simply call self dot the function get option. This would return all the option. Since I'm inheriting from this and this inherit from settings, I have access to that as well. So I can say self dot was that path? I think path. And you see how I have access to all the child as we are inheriting. You see things are, and these are a couple of settings that would allow you to remove the proto. So sometimes during scraping, these websites try to use some JavaScript to see whether the DOM element has the word selenium or automation. So we are taking care of that. We are fooling essentially them that that's that. There you go, guys. I think our all modules are ready to go. We have all these 4 modules and we can test it out. So now all I need to do here is in the, I think it was in the proxy module. So I need to enter my proxy, and what I would do here is I was thinking to get it from an environment, because I don't want to hard code in the video and show you, because it could be exposed, right? So essentially, give me 1 second while I pause this. A better idea would be we would grab this from a environment variable here. Never hard code things, right? So that's that. So now we have proxies, we have user agents, we have every single thing that. So based on whatever settings do you need, for example, let's say I do need a fake user agent every time. I do need it to use proxy. And now let's try to use and see if this thing is working also. Remember, the path is also defined in the settings class. So anything you want to do in the settings class. You don't. So that's the whole goal, right? You see how we followed nice inheritance approach beautifully. Yeah, driver dot. Allow me to pause and just update my environment variable, and then I'll resume the video and we get from there, because I don't want to expose my proxy variables, right? I mean the values, and then we'll say. So first of all, we create an instance, right? So we need to say, let's call this an underscore, and we'll say driver is equal to driver underscore dot get driver. So now we have the driver object, and now we could try this out. And once I do that, I want to say time dot sleep for 3 seconds, and then print driver dot page source. This is entire my spoofing modules. Looks good. Now I just need to add my env variable. Let me do that, and then try. Let's take a look at how things work, right? So I have all these modules made now, all these nice inheritance and classes. So let's see if the proxies provided by SSL proxy works the way we expected. So I fire it up. So every single time it's gonna use a fake spoofing agent. It's gonna start the browser in the full screen. I'm actually making it down, but this should fake your IP address. You see, this is not my real IP. It's a fake one. It's going through a proxy. Using this approach, you can access as many websites as you want, scrape things out. You can use my template that I just have wrote for you, but I just really want to show you their websites as well. If you are interested, So let me open up SSL proxies quickly. So if you Google that up, this is the website. They usually have these free proxies. You can try them out if you want. These are the free proxies. They have the premium one, which starts from $50, I believe. So yeah, they start from about $50. Let me bring this a little bit here. But yeah, so they have three plans, 99, 49, 29. Each proxies are premium, and essentially what they say, they're not coming from a shared pool, so they are unique in a sense. And also as I said, they have two examples as well. You can perform username password authentication, or you can whitelist your IP in order to use the proxy. They provide, I think, 2 million proxies. That should be pretty much what you need for your getting started. But yeah, this is all about developing spoofing modules in Python and using proxies, user agents, and other settings. If you really did enjoy this video, please do give a like. And if you have any more questions, list your question in the comments. And as usual, guys, keep smiling, keep programming, keep learning, stay safe, and I would see you guys upcoming next week.